The following parable is applicable to your modern era as it was in the time of the Jews over 2,000 years ago. I commend this truth to you who read these letters. A sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seeds fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured them. Other seeds fell on rocky ground where they had not much soil, and immediately they sprang up, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched and withered away. Other seeds fell upon thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil and brought forth good grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Hear then the meaning of this parable of the sower. Now, when anyone hears this message regarding the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one, which is the selfhood, snatches away what was sown in his heart. This is what was sown along the path. As for what was sown on the rocky ground, this is he who hears the message and immediately receives it with joy, yet he has no root in himself, but endures for a while. And when tribulation or persecutions come on account of this message, immediately he falls away. As for what was sown among thorns, this is he who hears the message. But the cares of the world and the delight in riches choke the message, and it bears no fruit. As for what was sown on good soil, this is he who hears and receives the message and understands it. He indeed bears fruit, and yields in one case 100-fold, in another 60, and in another 30-fold. Now, when we listen to this message and you think about it, where are you at? I know for myself, I have got to say, it is very difficult to maintain a message when you aren't supported, when the people that you surround yourself with do not think in the same way. Because you will get to a point where you will have these bursts of enlightenment come through, this undeniable truth, and in that very moment you will know something, and you will have no explanation for it other than it is come from the divine, and it is some mystical experience that you had. And yet, depending on the people that you surround yourself with, if you were to share that information with it, would you be supported in it? I know that previously I had not been. And it's kind of like explaining what it would be like to visit a star. You know, if you've never actually done it, you could describe it to somebody, you could tell them, but somebody would be like, yeah, okay. You know, they just don't actually understand because they don't have that experience for themselves. And therefore, depending on the kind of person that they are, they may not believe you. They may not support you, or they may think, okay, well, yeah, maybe something has happened, but because they haven't had that same truth come through, their life isn't going to change. Because when you have these bursts of this enlightenment come through, or the full meal deal, whatever is destined for you, depending on what it is that's supposed to happen, which I believe if you're listening to this, you're going to have it all. This is how we're creating heaven on earth. Just don't stop. But when that comes through and things change for you, because it changes for you, when you understand, when this love comes through, it's such a full force, it makes you understand things on so much more deeply. So let's say that your whole life someone has told you about a butterfly, and you've got this vision of it in your mind, and you're like, oh, it sounds so wonderful, it sounds, so cool, I can't wait to see it. And then all of a sudden one day you finally see a butterfly, and it's the most beautiful butterfly you've ever seen. Your knowledge and understanding of it in that day will be deeper than it has ever previously been, and you will understand something on another level that you didn't understand before you experienced it yourself. Now, this is what happens. When you continue to study the Christ letters, you are going to have these bursts of enlightenment come through. The only thing that would keep you from that is judgment and criticism of others. Because I'm telling you, it's of others, because you wouldn't be doing it if you weren't judging yourself. So these two obviously go hand in hand. But if you want to do good and you read the words and you know, oh, I need to do good, oh, I can't talk bad about these people, oh, I have to do this, oh, I have to all these things, and you know it, but you don't practice it, it will not come through. It is something that actually needs to be put into good soil and practiced and nurtured. And then when this happens, I have to warn you, things are going to shift. Because when that happens, if the people that are surrounding you do not understand like you understand, you are going to feel very different from them. You're going to feel very separate from them. And when they continue to act in the old ways that you acted at some point in your life too, you're not going to be able to handle it anymore. You're not going to be able to take it because you're going to be able to see what it is that everyone is doing to themselves. And because you love them, you're going to want to save them from that, but they're not going to understand. They're not going to get it on the level that you get it. And so if somebody, is somebody that just likes to call names, or they like to do things like that, and they continue to do that, you are going to see the damage that is caused, that is happening, and it's going to break your heart. And there's nothing that you're going to be able to do about it. And so at that point, you're then going to have to decide, what am I going to do? And what are you going to do? I know for myself, the divine decided for me. The divine orchestrated this, and so I know that this will be the case for you as well, because this is all a divine plan. There is nothing that is not a divine plan about it. And when you look at life, man, I gotta tell you, I had this experience this one evening, and I went out, and we know, oh, the world is an illusion. It truly is. It truly is. Because what I experienced was a room full of people, but most of them were not, I don't even believe, people. What I was seeing inside of them was a spirit, and it was not a good one. And there was hundreds of people. I'm air quoting there because I don't know exactly what they were. But during this evening, man, I've had so many experiences, but during that particular evening, I understood things very deeply. First of all, I understood, and I know this, that I command the spirit. And perhaps you do too in the space that you're in. And by that I mean that you hold the frequency that everyone else must attune to, because your frequency is higher, because you have more wisdom, because you have more knowledge. And so those who are surrounding you do not actually have a choice, but their spirit has to conform. Now here's the thing. This can happen when you are intentional, and when you are intentionally embodied and intentionally in command of the spirit. However, what happens on just a normal day when you're just being yourself and you're around people that you're around all the time? I remember I met this man one time, and he said, when people have these spiritual experiences and these huge awakenings, and all of a sudden they can do these mystical things, they have to move away, because the people and the places where they were will not accept them, this new version of themselves, because they don't know it. And they will continually throw their old persona on them and not believe them and take away their energy. And I understood this very deeply. And I thought, well, that was what was happening to me, but the divine orchestrated a bigger plan and said, no, this is not the case. How are you supposed to spread my good word if you are suppressed? And so the divine orchestrated a plan, and at that time I was like, what kind of plan is this? This is the worst plan in the whole entire world. How dare you? But in retrospect, it was the most wonderful gift I had ever been given. And it reminds me of that quote, and I'm sure I've said it before. I was once handed a box full of darkness, and it took me years to realize that this too was a gift. All of it is the gift. And so if you've been handed a box full of darkness, you must realize that it too is a gift. And maybe that box of darkness is telling you, you got to get the heck out of where you're at. Maybe it's telling you, you need to do something. And whatever that box of darkness is doing, I guarantee you it is not a box of darkness. It is a gift for you. And the sooner that you can see it as a gift, the sooner you will take yourself out of the frequency of hell, and the sooner you will put yourself in the frequency of heaven, and the sooner you will find relief, and you will then create more heaven. But I got to be real honest with you guys here. These last several months have been the most difficult months I've had. And I, connect with the divine regularly, meditate, things will come through. I still get the downloads, still get all the information, but there was an element, a piece that felt like it was missing. And so one day I'm driving down the road and I just got fed up and I said, "Have you betrayed me? I feel like I've been betrayed. I feel like I've been abandoned." And even just speaking these words, I felt guilty. I felt like, I can't feel that way. I've never said anything like this before. This can't be the case because I know what I know, and so I know it's impossible for me to be abandoned. I just know it. But it was a question of, but why then? Why are things happening in this particular way? And I was guided and I was told exactly what it was that I needed to do. And when we don't listen, when we say, okay, yeah, I know that, but I don't want to. I know, but I don't want to do that. Then things just stop. But that voice that you get, when you ignore it, it gets real quiet because it knows you're not going to listen. That's like, let's say a parent and you're not listening to them. So they raise their voice and you're still not listening to them and you're tuning them out. Well, pretty soon they're just going to stop. They're going to think, they're not listening to me. So what's the point in saying anything at all? And then that's what happens. And then you're on the receiving end of that and you think, well, why aren't you telling me? Well, they say, well, because I already told you. And you didn't listen. And do you think that the divine would do anything that wasn't in your best interest or anything that wasn't going to give you a reward or wasn't going to be the best and most wonderful thing for you? Because I don't think so. That hasn't been my experience so far. Although, perceptively at the time, I might have thought, this is not a good thing. But I haven't thought that in many years because I've understood that any time that I've gone through a period of, this doesn't feel good, on the other side of it was elation. And that was a period of time that was necessary and that was needed. Now here's the thing that happens when you have this beautiful spiritual awakening. What a wonderful thing it is. And you're going to be riding high for a long time after it happens. But here's the thing about it. We think, because we've had this come through, that every single thing has been cleared and I mean your mind has to have been cleared for that to come through. At that moment when it comes through, you have no hate, you have no criticism, you have no judgment, you have nothing that is earthly and low vibe contained within you. You don't. Because this is when it's cleared out, then the only thing that there's room for is that divine love, and so it will flow in. And when it's present there, what a wonderful thing that is. But what happens is you then live your life, because we gotta. And as we live our life, then we discover these things that trigger us. That we realize, okay, well, I thought that thing was healed, but I guess I never put myself in a position where I could be triggered for that thing to come up to realize that I actually haven't healed that thing yet. And so you will get put through these trials where you get triggered and you realize that there's more work that needs to be done, and you will think, what? Well, how can this be? How can I have all this knowledge? How can I have all this information? And how can this still be happening when I look at it in such a different way? And man, it's part of life, and it's meant to be this way so that you can help other people. Because it's not one good clean sweep and we're done with it. It feels that way at the time. But when it comes back, then this is your real test of faith. Because things are great when they're great, right? They're wonderful when they're wonderful. And when you're feeling joy and laughter and elation and happiness, life is wonderful. And then what happens when that flips? Do you then abandon and say, okay, divine, I don't love you anymore? What happens when a situation like that happens? What do you do about it? And so the best thing that we can do in those periods is just sit and just wait and be patient and listen. And get some rest and know that this too serves a purpose. What that purpose is at the time, we never know. If only we could know. One thing I realized when all the work that I've done with, my clients, I take them back, we do regression, so we go back. And the other day I was thinking, why do we do this? What is the purpose of that? And it is the why is because everybody wants to know why. So if you have some kind of behavior, you have some kind of way of thinking, or you have something that needs to change, as soon as your mind understands, oh, this is why I've been doing that, because there's always a reason, there's always a why, there's never not. And as soon as you can discover that why, then it shifts and changes things for you, and you will get the relief. Because then your mind doesn't have to assume anymore, it doesn't have to make anything up. It knows, it has the actual solid facts as to why I'm feeling this way, why this thing has happened, why. And we stop assuming, which assuming always just wastes all of our energy up and is never true. I mean, when is the last time you assumed something and you were actually right about it? When it was, this person behaves in this way, so you assume this or you assume that. We're usually not right. We're just wasting our time and wasting our energy making all these assumptions. Now, where I was going with that, I'm not exactly sure, but what I do know is that when you sow seeds on good soil, meaning you got to take the time, you got to make the time. And I know I have a friend, and she said she does walking meditation, and I agree. I would do that through my life as well, that my life is a walking meditation. But I also set aside time just to sit there and just to meditate, because different things will come through. It is deeper. It is a deeper experience when you set aside the time to get in there really deep. Now, what's the purpose of this? The only reason why you would need to do that is because you want to connect that bond even deeper, because you want to gain even more awareness, because you want to learn even more. But if where you're at, you feel like you don't need to do that, then that's cool, and you can do that for quite some time. But there will come a time when you need the deeper work to be done. This is just like, when we're seeing a therapist, going to a hypnotherapist, going to somebody or seeing somebody, talking to somebody. It is very similar, this meditation. Very similar, because what you're doing is you're doing your therapy, but you're doing it with the divine. And I got to tell you, there's nobody that's a better therapist than the divine. Because not only do they know everything about you, but they have these bright insights that come through that is like, oh, right, this is why, I see. And it will shift and change things for you when you can take the time and make the time to spend that time in meditation, communing with the divine. And what you are doing is you are creating more good soil. You are making fertile ground. It is like the meditation is the sun and the rain that comes on that beautiful soil that you have, that is going to nourish the seeds that you have planted. But what happens when we're planting seeds and we're planting them and we know at that exact time, hey, I shouldn't be planting this, but it's like we can't help ourselves. Let's say it was negativity, or let's say it was negative gossip or something like that, and we've got ourselves involved in it. And even at the time we know we shouldn't be doing it. What kind of seeds are we planting during that time? Something that we are not going to want to harvest. And so how do we stop ourselves from doing this? Well, why was it happening in the first place? What company do you keep? And I got to say, I love Alan Watts. Man, I just love listening to that guy's voice. But he has such great insights. And he was talking the other day, and he said, when you become awakened, something happens. And it's difficult to find love. And it's difficult to, live the way that you lived before, because you see that everyone is playing a role. Everyone is playing a game, and some people don't know that they're still playing the game. Some people don't see it. And you can see the character, the masks that people are playing, truly the character that they're playing, and you can't unsee it. And you almost wish that you didn't have the insights that you had, so that you could just be one of the normal people that's walking around that's just living their life unaware. But you wouldn't trade it. But it gets to the point where you understand that, man, I don't resonate, I don't vibrate at the same level as I used to. And therefore these people that I used to associate with, they're just not my people anymore. Some of them will rise with you. They absolutely will rise with you. And some of them will not, because they are not meant to. Either not in this lifetime or not at the same time as you, because it is meant to be, for some of us and for a period of time, a lonely road. This is part of the faith. This is part of being able to keep your energy pure and to yourself and to know who you actually are. Because as long as you are in communion with somebody else, you will not be fully yourself. I was talking to my daughter about this the other day. So she has a boyfriend and said, well, what he likes to do, I like to do because I like to spend time with him. And what I like to do, he likes to do because he likes to spend time with me. And I understand that, that young love. But what happens when we're young and we do this, because I've been there, so I know, is that we begin to lose ourselves. And then after, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, we think, well, man, I don't even know who I am, because we've been living our life for somebody else. And I'm not saying that that's not a good thing. I'm saying it can be a difficult thing when you're on the spiritual path, because when you get to be 30-something years old and somebody says, well, who are you? And you say, oh, I'm a hypnotherapist and I have this many kids and this and that. And they say, well, no, I didn't say, what do you do? I said, who are you? And when they can't even comprehend or understand the question, then there's some deep work that needs to be done. And usually it's upon something like this that somebody realizes, oh, I don't even know who I am. And they begin to do that personal work, and it's perfect timing. They lived their life blindly for however long, and now all of a sudden they have this insight of, oh, well, I don't even understand what that means. And I want to understand what that means because I want to know who I am. And so they begin to look at themselves. And perhaps for the very first time in their life. And this starts the process. And then a couple years is going to go by, and then 10 years is going to go by, and then they're going to think, oh, you know what? No, I do know who I am now. And then the next part of their life is going to be extremely different than the first part. And really what we're doing is unlearning all those things. But we just came here to live a life. We just came here to play the game of life. And there's no wrong way to do it. So even if you're listening to this and you think, well, I don't know who I am right now, well, perfect. Well, today's the perfect day to start. And the best way to figure that out is to isolate yourself for a while. If you could remove yourself, if you have the ability to do that, to just go away alone completely for a couple of weeks and sit in your own energy, you will understand and you will realize some things about yourself. First of all, you're going to intimately know how you think. You're going to see your habits, you're going to see your behaviors, you're going to see the thought loops and the repetitive patterns and the things that are you. And you're going to determine the ones that you like and the ones that you don't like and the ones that you should work on, the ones that you don't need to work on, and the ones that you've already made it, and the ones that you're not even close. And through understanding that, by being by yourself, then when you come back with people, you are then going to see, oh, I do shift when this person comes around. And I shift when that person comes around, and that one, and every single one, I'm playing a character, I'm playing a role, and that ain't me, man. And you'll realize that you've been playing these characters. Now, why have we been playing them? Because we're just people, and this is just what we do. Are we trying to please people? Are we trying to be accepted? I don't know the why of the original, why we behave in certain ways around certain people. But what I do know is when you get to the point where you don't care about that anymore, and where being yourself is more important and being in your own energy is more important, then all those things begin to just not matter anymore. And you begin to stop, placating people. You begin to stop caring about just going out and being social or getting attention from this people or that people, because you realize that none of that matters. And your priorities shift. And then you begin to understand, probably after a period of isolation, but of course all of us are different, that it's time to go back out in the world and spread this knowledge and this information and this understanding that you have. Because you've leveled up so much, people are going to notice it, and the people who haven't leveled up, which will probably be 99.9% of the people around you, they might not like it. Some of them are going to love it, and they're going to say, what did you do? What's your secret? You look so happy. And you'll be able to tell them. But most of the people are going to be like, oh, you're different. Oh, yeah, you've turned weird. Oh, I don't like this. and they're not going to be your people anymore. And if you want to continue to be their people, you're going to have to play that old character, and it is going to suck the absolute life out of you having to play a character now that you realize that that's what you were doing this whole time. So, not to scare you off, but this is a subtle warning that when things shift, things really shift. And the life that you experience after illumination is a very different life than the one previous to it. But what I can tell you about it is it's better. It's just better. It's just so much better. And you could honestly be completely alone, completely by yourself, and it would still be better. When this enlightenment came through several years ago, what I realized was that I didn't need anything. I literally didn't need anything. I could have lived in a tree out in the middle of the freezing cold woods, and I would have been just filled with joy and laughter and happiness, and I wouldn't have needed one material thing in my life. I wouldn't have needed a person. I wouldn't have needed anything, because the love is that perfect and that pure that there's nothing that needs to be added to it. There's not one thing that needs to be added to it. And knowing the love that deeply, this is how I know that there's no healing, there's no nothing that cannot occur, because the love is so perfect. And when it's so perfect that you wouldn't mind just living in a tree out in the middle of the woods, if you just have that thing, you will be completely satisfied, lets you know how perfect and pure and wonderful that love is. And it allows you to have so much compassion for other people, because they don't know that. They don't know it. And so because they don't know how perfect that love is, they are suffering. You know, some people, maybe they will have had an NDE, near-death experience, something along these lines, and they will have had, for a moment, momentarily, that burst of light come through, filled with this peace, filled with this just the most amazing, wonderful feeling, and then from there, they're not afraid of death anymore. But it is that love that you can experience now. You don't have to die. You don't have to have an NDE to have that, and it will change you. It will change you. It will change you, and you don't have to wait for death for that to happen. You can experience that, and you can live that now in this life, and you can share it with others, and you can help people heal, and you can help people remember the love, because that's all that we're doing, is we're just remembering. We've just forgotten. Through our chosen amnesia, we're like, let's go back down to earth. All right, now, okay, now I'm going to give you the amnesia medicine. Now you got to remember, you're not going to remember anything. I remember having this conversation. I remember having this. It was a in-between life regression that I had done. And I remember sitting around this table, and we were all discussing what we were going to do. Okay, we're going to come back. Okay, you're going to do this. Okay, you're going to do that. Okay, this person's volunteering for this or that. And I remember my, now, nearly, hopefully by this week, ex-husband volunteering and saying, I'll go back and I'll do this. And now I see what role he was playing. And I remember telling him, it's going to be harder than you think, though. It's going to be harder than you think. And he's like, yeah, no big deal, whatever, yeah, I can do it. And I remember just adamantly saying, but it's going to be harder than you think, because you're not going to remember any of this. And I remember kind of that fear that you had before you came here of, yeah, but we have amnesia, we don't remember anything. And it's like, yeah, but you will. And those of us who chose to come back here for whatever purpose, where we had to remember, of course, it was inevitable that we're going to remember. But what happens sometimes is that something to wake us up, it has to jolt us awake, and therefore it has to shake us and rock us to our core. And therefore, when it happens, we might think this is the most terrible thing that's ever happened, but it's not. It's the moment that woke you up. It's the moment that shook you awake and said, no, remember? This is why. This is why you came, remember? And as soon as you remember, then you just become thankful for that tragic, horrible experience or whatever it happened to be, and you understand that it wasn't tragic and it wasn't horrible, but it was a wonderful gift, and it was perfectly timed, and it was meant to be exactly as it was. And then things begin to shift, and life begins to look different, feel different, and then we experience our life completely different. This is what I have for you guys here today. Love you guys so much. Thanks for tuning in. Once again, I have that childhood wound quiz. It's linked down below. You can go and take that. It's illuminating. And I love you guys, and I hope that you have the most wonderful day today. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you soon.